Thank you, Eleanor. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicholas Johnson, the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for joining us here on one of these beautiful days that helps you all understand, this is why we do these things in the south of France. An awesome evening, awesome afternoon here at this villa. Grateful for you're here. Also, huge thanks to our partners. Like the whole week of stuff we're doing here at Axios would not be possible without the support of our partners. So very excited to once again be working with Weber Shandwick, who made this conversation possible. And I'm very excited to welcome to the stage my old Can buddy, the global president and North America CEO of Weber Shandwick. Jim, come on up. How are you?
All right, buddy.
Bonjour. So let's start big picture. It's been a couple months since we last talked, but let's just start with your sense of like the vibes, your outlook. Like, what's your view of things here as you arrived in the south?
The vibe. I mean, the outlook and the vibe are different. Those are different questions. Look, a lovely vibe, and it's always a pleasure to hang with you in Cannes. And certainly, I would say the vibe here probably a little bit more civilized than it was in Davos in January, where it was cold and not even snowy. The outlook, when we were together last in Davos, we had, at Weber, we had surveyed like 200 CEOs and other C-suite executives heading into Davos to determine the outlook for the year, for 2025. And there were two things that we learned then that are interesting to like look back upon now, right? So first we learned that most CEOs had a renewed economic optimism heading into 2025.
I remember that, yeah.
Remember that? That was after Trump had been elected president, but before the inauguration, or almost during the inauguration, right? And then second, despite that renewed economic optimism, there was a significantly increased concern around potential for volatility, right? So, like, fast forward.
I see where this is going.
Yeah. Potential for volatility certainly paid off. Renewed economic optimism probably tempered, abated would be maybe the way to say it. So certainly a different time now than then, and everyone knows why. I mean, between the tariffs and conflict in the Middle East, conflict in the Ukraine, and all of the rest, and just also just general tensions around intersection of business, society.
It was like a return to reality. Like I remember that week leading up to the inauguration. Like, okay, unleashing animal spirits from the business community, and now living through it 6 months later.
Right.
Be careful what you wish for. Well, let's shift a little bit from outlook to vibe. Actually, vibe shift, in fact, particularly here in Cannes. What is your bead on this sense of like creativity in tech?
Right, creativity in tech. I mean, look, some people they try to create this like is tech gonna win in the war versus creative. I feel like that's a false choice. I think obviously there's plenty of room here for both. And frankly, the overlap between the two. But certainly, if you spend time in the basement at the Congress Center, which I did earlier today, you can see amazing creative work, and it's really inspiring to be there. Then you walk along the beach, and you can certainly see that the tech companies are here stronger than ever, right, and will only continue to be so. So it'll be interesting to see what the next couple of years bring in terms of that,
Well, so I'll come back to that one when we return.
We'll do it next year if we have to.
Next year. But then let's stick on this on the creative side, and like an element of that is like remaining culturally relevant, right? Like how do brands approach that, particularly in light of the volatility?
Yeah, I think it's like two things. It's cultural relevancy and cultural resilience. And I think cultural resilience is maybe if you're like a CEO or a corporation, you're trying to think about, there's all this tension in the world. You have to do everything that you've always had to do as a CEO or a C-suite leader, but then you also have to navigate the increased complexity at the intersection of business and culture. And when I say culture here, I mean like the context within which companies are operating, right? The political context, the social context, et cetera. And I think that there's it's been a challenge for some companies, to navigate that complexity. Target's a good recent example. And then on the brand side, right? So brands are more about the brand relevancy than they're about cultural relevancy. And I think from that perspective, all brands are trying to be in culture. And like last year we had some award-winning work that we did for Pop-Tarts. It's like the great example of kind of being in culture. And this year, I think similarly with Airbnb. But that's kind of like the brand view on that.
Is there when brands come to you and ask for that, like, are you balancing risks and challenges there as far as like jumping into that? Like it could be like it's a high risk, high reward element.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly more risk nowadays than arguably any time in recent memory for both on the brand side and at the corporate side. It's also interesting because like the brand side right now, there's a lot of concern given like the pushback against brand purpose, right? Which is something that we have seen in the past couple of years. In the same way that we've seen pushback against things, like DEI and ESG. And I think that, similar to DEI and ESG, where there's been despite the pushback against the nomenclature, I actually still feel like there's a good amount of, momentum around those things, just called differently. Maybe DEI is increasingly being looked at as inclusion and belonging.
We talked about this last year, the difference between like action versus what the sign you put on the door.
That's right. And then from a brand purpose perspective, it's interesting. If you look at all of the best work right now, it's not that brand purpose is dead, which, I figured you'd probably ask me that because you always ask me if something is dead.
I ask you every single time.
Because I don't think that brand purpose is dead, but I think that it's much more purposeful now. And so, like, there was a time where a lot of the brand purpose stuff that was happening was a bit performative. And I think that the performative brand purpose stuff
I feel like we do a pulse check or like an EKG check every time we talk about is brand purpose finally dead and over, and you're like, oh, no. It's like it's alive. I wouldn't say, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but like alive and transitioning.
Yeah, it's alive. I mean, certainly, like, look, you just got to, I think that the brand purpose work of today is actually more purposeful than the brand purpose work.
Like not performatively, like mean it, right? We got to talk about AI. So you've got a ton of secret AI stuff you're launching. I'm sure you want to just unveil them right here in view of the Mediterranean. Give us your thoughts on like how it's impacting folks here and how you think about it more broadly.
Yeah, I mean, look, you heard from our previous speaker. I think agentic transformation is going to redefine our industry.
Have you put any agents to work after you left the hotel, like Carter?
Yeah, I mean, I do actually have a number of agents, though he probably like built them himself. I had someone help me build them. But yeah, we're doing an enormous amount of agentic transformation. I think from an AI perspective in our industry, in our profession, it's interesting, right? So we just did this research. We're going to release it next week. I guess I'm going to be pre-releasing it right now because it's relevant to the answer to your question.
You heard it here first?
Yeah. So, right now, we surveyed a bunch of like communications and marketing leaders, and what we found is that like 80% of the people we surveyed know that like agentic transformation is going to be central to the success of their function going forward. But despite that, only 15% have like a plan for what they're going to do. So that's obviously a pretty significant gap, and that gap is concerning. I think from an AI and agentic transformation perspective, what we're seeing is still a certain amount of skepticism in the industry, but at the same time, an enormous amount of progress. And so that there's also a widening gap or gulf there. And so, like, when I look at our, advisory, we have like an advisory AI platform, and what it's allowing our clients to do is previously, stuff that was previously impossible as recent as 12 months ago, right? So things like creating synthetic audience agents for any audience that you want to test something on, whether it's test messaging, test creative, test ads, test an entire campaign.
But like you mentioned this gap, and so what separates the folks who get it from those who, aside from hiring Jim O'Leary to tell them about it, it's like what explains for that gap and what happens to the folks who miss it?
Yeah, well, the people who miss it, I think, are unfortunately going to not be in a great spot.
Next year,
right? And in the foreseeable future, I think the people who get it, which is increasingly more and more people, they're seeing how what agents can do, what AI can do, what Gen AI can do, is really just transforming the profession, right, in a significant way. And so there's any number of like very real use cases now that you can point to, as opposed to just like the AI hyperbole, which I think was very much like of years past and probably still quite prevalent. But like I said, you can create a synthetic audience. I could create a synthetic audience of you, and I could test something against it.
I feel like the big AI journey is that we've gone from these gauzy pie in the sky ideas, like no, you can actually do this specific thing, and it does it very quickly and very well.
Yeah, that's right.
Before we get to hooker, let's end on one fun thing. Let's do it one can thing. You're a can regular, can pro, know all the greatest places. What is your one tip for surviving the week?
Yeah. All right. So I have a tip, but before I do that, I want to give you like the 60-second top line on where I think the future of our industry is going, because your AI question kind of had me thinking about it, and I didn't get to that part of the answer. Okay.
Got it.
And then I'll give you a very simple can tip that I don't even actually know it's still possible, but it used to be a very pro tip. All right. So when I think about the future of our industry, I think in the next 5 years, and by the way, this is not entirely due to AI, but AI plays a role in it. So I'm just going to caveat that. But over the next 5 years in our industry, we are going to experience more change than we have in the past 50. And this is not like a hyperbolic statement that I'm making so that Eleanor uses it as the headline of her next newsletter. I actually feel very strongly about this, and I think that there are 5 trends that are creating 5 economies. Not like economy in the sense of like U.S. economy, but economy in the trend sense of the word, like the circular economy, right? So there's 5 trends that are redefining our industry that are creating each a corresponding economy that is going to entirely transform our profession and our industry. And so I'll tell you what the 5 are, and then I'll answer Nick's other question, right?
Fair.
So the 5 are the attention economy, right? The experience economy, the stakeholder economy, the creator economy, and the intelligence economy, okay? And so attention economy is you can't buy attention anymore. You need to earn it. Experience economy is, despite some of the initial missteps of maybe the metaverse and others, the digital experiences are going to change the way things are done in the future significantly. Stakeholder economy, CEOs under greater pressure than ever before at the intersection of business and culture. Opportunity in helping navigate that tension. 4, creator economy. Look around, right now. I need to say no more. And then 5th, intelligence economy, and this is AI, right? AI revolution, AI, on top of all of the things we just talked about, is going to fundamentally reshape our profession. And so I think that maybe I'll write something in Axios next week and spell this out.
Send us out an email, yes.
Okay, all right, challenge accepted. Back to your question, can hack. So I don't know if you can still do this, because this is what I used to do when I was younger and out a little bit later at Cannes. But you used to be able to, the pizza guy at the gutter bar, you could get a connect with the pizza guy at the gutter bar, so you could text him in advance, and instead of waiting in the really long line, this. Yeah, I see some nods over here.
The hack that still works. Okay.
I don't know if it still works, but I recommend trying it out, because it'll be enormously valuable to you.
And if you're up too late
stuck
tonight,
at the gutter bar.
there you go. Okay, great life hack. Jim, great to see you again.
Always a pleasure, Nick.
Next year. Huge thanks to Weber Shandwick, and let's bring Eleanor back up for the big finish.
All right.